think gas masks are some of the most strange and interesting artefacts of the last 100 years. The First World War was the first time that poison gas was used as a weapon of war. It had been regulated in a treaty several years earlier, but that was widely disregarded. The cultural impact of gas warfare in the First World War was extraordinary, and we see that across the interwar period, the 1920s and 30s in particular. But it became, in the culture of the 1920s and 30s, an absolute terror. Gas warfare was regarded in the same way that nuclear war was regarded in the 1960s, 70s and 80s as this impending apocalypse that would destroy entire cities. It was widely believed that any European war after the First World War would be a gas war first and foremost, and that would have massive casualties. And that strongly influenced the preparations that were made in the years leading up to the Second World War, so that the entire populations, as far as possible, were provided with gas masks. This is a Soviet gas mask, a fairly recent model, but this displays the main factors are still there. It remains fairly unchanged. I think what we learn from the, I wouldn't call it hysteria, but the mass terror of gas warfare and of nuclear warfare and similar things like that, is that there is a terror of scientifically advanced weapons, these inhuman innovations, when in fact the vast majority of casualties in war are casualties of shrapnel injuries and bullet injuries. These weapons, which are regarded as apocalyptic, are normally not nearly as effective as it is imagined. And that was the case in the First World War as well, even though there were massive numbers of casualties. Gas is in many ways a very imperfect weapon, but as we see in Syria, where it was used recently, where there was enormous outcry and terror about that, hundreds of thousands have been killed there, a fairly small number with gas, but because of that horror, because of it being regarded as somehow more inhumane and monstrous, those are the things that we see in the news. So somehow, 100 years on, there is still that terror of this unearthly, inhuman weapon.